please, continue sharing it. I appreciate it from the bottom of my heart. This is a big dream of mine. And yeah, let's get straight into it. Welcome to the first official episode of the Sonder Society podcast. I'm your host, Jordan. And today I would just like to go over, what Sonder means to me and really just, the whole branding behind this. Because Sonder actually has a really, a really outlandish but a great definition to it. Sonder is an amazing word. It's one of my favorite words. It's basically how, I go through my life. The definition for Sonder is the realization that each random passerby is living a life as vivid and complex as your own. Basically meaning that, you have to understand that there are multiple perspectives to life. And every random person that you pass by has a different perspective on life. And, they see things a different way and stuff like that. It's a very simple meaning, but it's so touching and it's such, how do I explain this? It's very much realistic to, our daily lives. It's not something we think about, but it's something that's there 24/7. And basically throughout my life, I've met lots of people who have interesting perspectives on a lot of things, which is a big reason why, I wanted to bring the Sonder side of things, that definition, into a podcast, because I know a lot of great people who do a lot of great things, a lot of interesting things at that. So I was like, what if I could bring that to a podcast setting? What if, I can bring those people in so they could share their experiences with other people, so other people could get a greater outlook on how other people see things, if that makes any sense. Because a big example is, I have a good majority of connections with a lot of people. I know a lot of people who are into sneaker reselling. I know skaters. I know people who have, just done amazing things with their lives. And I feel like that's a certain element, not a lot of people bring to their podcast. Of course, you have great podcasters out there Joe Rogan. That's a big example because, he does a lot of those interviews where he brings in different people who, are expertized and are experts in their field, and then he brings them on to just sit there and just talk about these different things to get their different perspectives. And I began watching Joe Rogan around, I want to say about 2018, 2017. Really just at the time, he was doing regular interviews, a lot of them. I remember the first one I watched, actually. It was, who was it with? Oh, it was the Neil deGrasse Tyson one. That's one of my favorite ones because Neil deGrasse Tyson is a big, a part of what I like. I'm very big, on talking about the universe. I even have Jupiter tattooed on my left shoulder. So just, seeing, Neil deGrasse Tyson answer these outlandish questions that you would never expect for someone of that caliber to answer, I thought was just absolutely amazing. And, after that, of course, I just went along my time and I just noticed and I kept thinking about the word, and it just stayed in my mind. It kind of stuck to me because more and more I thought about it, the more and more I realized the definition of this, just having these random passerbyers who also live as much as a vivid and complex life as our own is just very interesting. A big part of me that really brought Sonder into my life was this artist called Brent Faiyaz. Now, the meaning and Sonder says, it's about different perspectives and the complexity of the compelling story when it comes to this word. And I thought his was the most interesting because he stated in an interview that Sonder means to him is to be authentic. He lives his life in an authentic way. He never tries to be anybody else. He is who he is. And that's why a lot of people actually gravitate towards Brent Faiyaz. He makes music like no other. He makes songs like no other. He talks about a lot of things like no other. He talks about his perspective and how, we should be living a more carefree life and things like that, And, another, a huge thing about me is, I'm really big into philosophy. Specifically, Japanese philosophy, just because, I grew up watching anime and I just gravitated more towards the Japanese culture than anything. And the more and more like I got older and I started getting into philosophy, the Japanese culture was just one of the most interesting, because they're one of the most organized, happy living cultures out there. You know, if you go to Japan today, they have so many rules in place, but it's just like everyone there is, you know, happy living. Like I believe the average age of living there is about 104 to 106 or something like that. Like that's their average, you know, death age there. And ours in America is somewhere ranging between the 70s and 80s. And, you know, look at how we live versus how, you know, the Japanese people live. And, you know, so like a lot of the Japanese philosophers actually, you know, talk about how to live life carefree, but still, you know, care and be there. You know, it's more of like living life in its presence and still being able to, you know, pass off good deeds to every single person you meet, or just being that nice person and living a very organized life. And that also, you know, ties in with Buddhism. Okay, that's a really big thing I'm on. You know, I love to study religion. It's one of like, you know, my little hobbies and stuff. And Buddhism and Hinduism actually like really caught my eye, especially with the fact that in Buddhism, you know, they strive for nirvana, they strive for the greater being. You know, Buddhism or the Buddha, the definition of that is either it's usually the noble one or the enlightened one, which, you know, comes from when well, as the story says, and it's not the most accurate story, but Buddha was a very sheltered child, you know, under a king at the time, and his dad just kept him there until he was about 18. And then once Buddha himself turned 18, he decided, I want to know what's in the outside world. You know, he got curious, so, you know, he broke free from those chains and he decided to travel. And he realized like all the riches and all of that he had mattered nothing, because he saw what was really going on in the world. He saw poverty, he saw death, he saw disease, he saw all of this, and he was like, I'm over here living in my castle, living my best life, you know, with millions, but I'm not out here helping these people who aren't helped. So he just went on to study and try to understand the concepts of this new reality that he had just found out. Now, of course, as many people know, or, you know, I don't know if it's common knowledge or not, but, you know, Buddha wasn't ever really able to find those answers. So he just realized, like, you know, being the person who tries to help as much as he can and still, you know, living the best life for himself was the best way of living. Now, towards the end of the story, Buddha ends up actually, you know, traveling into the woods and just meditating for years upon years upon years, you know, and during that process, he was, of course, starving himself of food. He was depriving himself of water just because, you know, he thought that was the richest, you know, compared to people who didn't have that, who didn't have those luxuries. And that was just something I found very much interesting. And then, you know, after that, you know, of course, comes into play with reincarnation. And a lot of people believe that the Buddha was reincarnated to just like his spirit lived on within so many people because of, you know, the grace and the morals and the ethics that he just passed down to so many people across the world, you know. And it's a very touching story, and it very much ties into Sonder, because then that goes back to those random passerby complex like perspectives, you know. And his perspective is that even though I'm here, you know, living my luxurious life, there's more out there to the world that I could be doing instead of, you know, being selfish and just living my best life. And, you know, I think that's personally for me, that's the best way I can explain Sonder. You know, anytime I try to tell somebody, you know, I'm just like, it's very complex. It's just understanding multiple perspectives that are in the world and understanding that everyone has a different perspective about everything. But as long as, you know, we can unite and, you know, bring a different understanding to everyone's perspective, I feel like, you know, personally for me, I think there would be, you know, it would be a lot more peaceful in the world. Because I just feel like if we understood everyone's perspective on everything and, you know, of course, not try to argue, which is very cliche of me to say, and, you know, not try to argue with everybody, you know, there'd be an easier solution to a lot of things. And, you know, to me, that is the true meaning of Sonder. Thank you for tuning in to this latest podcast episode. We are now on Spotify, so go ahead and follow us on there. We are also on YouTube, so go ahead and subscribe. Please continue to share the podcast. I want to get the word out. Sonder Society taking over. And thank you once again.